Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday evening to you all. I hope you guys have had an awesome day out there. A great start to your new month, September. And it's September 1st, and I know from one, I am thankful for it. Definitely entering some of the best times of the year, right? You know, September, October, November, December, but not for everybody. There's a lot of people who are big time summer fans. But we still got some warm days ahead of us. It's only September 1st, so especially for folks who live in the South, it stays pretty warm to hot sometimes all the way through October, maybe even November. But big update on the tropics tonight. We're going to talk about a couple things, talk about things we already know. First off, Tropical Storm Danielle formed today, and by the time, heck, we might get to the 8 p.m. update here in about 45 minutes, and it might be Hurricane Danielle. So obviously, I'm calling it Tropical Storm Danielle, but that might be old news by the time we get to the next few updates at least. But we'll talk about that. But the big topic on this video tonight is going to be Invest 91L. I wouldn't call it a trend, but we saw, the Euro, the Canadian model, throw some hints at the operational runs of some different scenarios. We've been talking about with Invest 91L that it was going to head out to sea for the last 3 or 4 days. And I still think it will. But there's been a couple other scenarios that could happen. So we'll talk about that. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Almost at 28,000 subscribers. It's incredible. I sat at like 26,000 subscribers, somewhere in that range for what it seemed like 3 or 4 months. And then I picked up 1,000 subscribers in a 2-week period. I really appreciate the support and y'all guys just definitely just supporting what I do. Hit me up on Twitter. It's a great way to follow along. If you ever thought about joining the channel, I got 18 incredible members that support what I do monthly. I don't have anything to offer, guys, anything cool, shirts or anything. I'm not really big into making my own shirts. It's not corny, but it just doesn't, it seems weird, for people to be wearing around shirts that say Mitch West weather and stuff like that. I'm just not that type of guy, but it's just a way to support what I do. One of these days in the future, I really hope to actually give people perks and things that who do join my channel. That is a goal. If it ever becomes a full-time hobby for me, obviously. But 2.5-minute intro, let's get going. If you guys got anything I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So pretty much your 5 p.m. update from earlier today. This is chances to develop within the next 48 hours. This has dropped. There's only a 20% chance. This is not going to be a story out here, really. We're not even going to talk about this much. But we got Tropical Storm Danielle. It's a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Remember, when we get to 75 miles per hour, that is considered a Category 1 hurricane. And it made a pretty substantial jump from a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm throughout the day today. So you had, some pretty big strengthening. As 1,005 millibar low pressure, so it's inching towards hurricane status. And I think it will become a hurricane in the next update or two. And then we got this. 50% chance to develop in the next 2 days. So this is something we're going to talk about in this evening's video. Some weird models runs showed up today from the Euro and the Canadian. I know the Canadian's not a really respectable model, but the Euro certainly is. So we need to just talk about a couple things. So here's the feature right here. This is a little old tropical storm Danielle up here. It's not expected to really bother anybody, but it is expected to kind of stall out and strengthen, maybe as high as maybe a Category 2 hurricane. Maybe higher, but we'll see. I think Category 2 will be the highest it gets, but we'll watch it. This is 91L. Invest 91L. We've been talking about this for what seems like a millennium now. But it is going to continue to be a story over the next several days. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something we are still talking about in the 7 to 10 day range. It is just, as far as the forward speed, it's about on track, but it is moving so slow and it is not organized whatsoever. Every time it shows a hint of organizing, it just diminishes. So moving forward here, we'll take a closer look at Invest 91L. And sure enough, there's just areas of convection. It looks like there's 2 different pieces of main energy. So the idea is the weaker this stays for longer, the more it'll creep west. And the more it creeps west, the slower it probably goes. If it strengthens a good bit here in the next 48, for example, if we get to the end of Labor Day weekend and this somehow becomes a tropical storm, I think it's almost a guarantee this is going to head out to sea, not even bother Bermuda. It's going to do what the GFS is showing. But if this continues to stay weak all the way through next week, there's a chance that it can sneak a little bit closer to the Bahamas, kind of like what it was showing 4 or 5 days ago. And then that's when we have to watch, because eventually it's going to tap into a better environment and have a chance to get a little bit closer to the southeast than maybe what we've seen in models over the last few days. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what the latest European and Canadian models showing as a great example of what could happen. But check it out. I mean, the sun is setting on Danielle. To me, it looks like a Category 1 hurricane right now. Intense spin. Look at this low-level circulation on it. And it looks like it's becoming somewhat vertically stacked. This is going to be a beautiful system by the time we wake up in the morning. I think this will be an all-out hurricane by the time we make a video in the morning. I might be wrong, but that's just my prediction. I think it'll be a Category 1 hurricane. But she is looking good as the sun sets on her way out here in the deep in the North Atlantic Ocean out here. So let's talk about Invest 91L. Then we'll talk about a piece of energy we might be watching in the long term, deep in the MDR, the main development region. So this is what the latest Euro did today. Very interesting run. So going through in time, we're getting into Saturday morning. You have now a week, basically the same system, a tropical wave. It'll basically look the exact same as it does right now, I'm guessing. A 1010 millibar low pressure, it's still very weak. This is actually now, if the Euro is correct, looking like it can bring some showers now. If it stays this far south and the Euro is correct, it could bring some showers to the northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico. But look at it, just continues to creep. It's not strengthening. Remember, you watch that L and you watch to see if that millibar lowers. So it continues to creep. You're getting all the way into next Wednesday morning. This is 6 days out. It is still just a tropical wave chilling east of the Bahamas. But we keep moving here in time. We're getting into all the way next weekend. At this point, we're next Saturday morning. This is 9 days out. Finally, the Euro now wants to sneak this a little bit closer to the Bahamas. This is probably a strong tropical storm at this point. Next Saturday morning, based off one run of the European, the operational run. And you compare this to what the Euro showed 24 hours ago, and it showed nothing. It showed the main piece of energy way over here, right? And this is the run from today, right? And all of a sudden you got this. Now, I will say this. This could turn around and go right back away tomorrow. But there's this idea that the big old typhoon, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. It starts with an H. I didn't even bother looking it up. I've just looked at it, and the name looks pretty difficult to pronounce. You know how I am with tongue twisters, guys. So sometimes those typhoons in the Pacific can change up and down and create some downstream, not issues necessarily, but downstream effects in the upper level weather patterns. Sometimes it creates more troughs in the U.S., and basically it can alter upper level patterns for anything in the U.S. In fact, I would argue that over the next 2 weeks, that any kind of weather patterns in the U.S. will probably be a little bit harder to predict. So those typhoons can do some crazy things in the downstream effect of things. So there's this idea, there's this theory that the typhoon in the Pacific is starting to affect some of these model runs. I'm trying to find the best way to explain it. But anyways, it's not going to matter if all these models turn around and flip back the other way. I'm just showing you what can happen. So the idea is a weaker storm is going to creep further west. And then as it eventually strengthens, which I feel like it would eventually, right? You know, in the Southwest Atlantic, you're going to be dealing with shear all throughout this area of the Atlantic. And then I think by the time it kind of gets in this area, based off the latest Euro, shear will lessen up. And then all of a sudden, you have a borderline hurricane 10 days out in the cusp of off the coast of the Southeast. So it's a totally different run than what we saw even in the run last night on the Euro. Canadian, it's not necessarily this great model, but same kind of deal. Here it is. It shows a weak system. It's right here. You barely can see it. Suddenly it gets in the Southwest Atlantic just outside the Bahamas and strengthens this very quickly as we get into next Friday evening, 8 days out, into an all-out hurricane. And now you got an all-out hurricane well off the coast of eastern Florida. So the pattern aloft in the North Atlantic still supports recurving of these tropical systems, but it's just something we need to watch. Now, the latest GFS it still rapidly intensifies this. I wouldn't use the word rapidly intensify, but it strengthens it very quickly once it gets just north of the Leeward Islands. Therefore, a stronger system, so hear me out, a stronger system taps into wind patterns aloft. It can tap into more, trying to find the best way to explain this. So basically, it taps into higher steering currents in the atmosphere. So, 40,000 feet up in the air, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. It can tap into those steering currents. So basically, anyways, a stronger system in a nutshell, remember this, is always going to want to go more north in latitude. It's always going to want to turn northeast and at least try to find that weakness. So that's why the GFS turns this very quickly. It doesn't even get it close to Bermuda, which is right here, and it has a much stronger system. So a stronger system in the short to medium term is going to head out to sea. So we're actually, in this case, hoping for a stronger system, because a weaker system creeps it and moves it more west-northwest as opposed to making it turn and then go northeast eventually. So there's something to watch. Now, I will tell you, there is no support on this from the ensembles. None. Not one member, 1 week from today, sneaks anything in this area right here. So that's one thing to watch. The ensembles has no support for the operational run, so that's a red flag. But we will watch over the next couple days. So, Alex, this is the way to where I was having an issue explaining the steering currents in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So I'll explain it here. So this is 200 millibar low pressure. So I'm sorry, this is 200 millibar wind streams here. So this is about 40,000 feet up in the air that you're seeing all these wind streams. So moving theory in time, the reason this is not strengthening is because you have a tut that's bowing out in this area. It's blasting this with shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and it just will not allow a storm to get developed that we thought was going to develop by the time it reached this area maybe a week ago. But it's not. It's not going to develop. Most model guidance agrees with that, except the GFS. So the Euro keeps this kind of going north of the Caribbean islands, sneaks this piece of energy into areas of just east of the Bahamas. And you notice there's wind currents everywhere, but a stronger system fills the wind currents in the upper levels of the atmosphere much, much better than a weaker system. So you're looking at this, and you're looking at 200 millibar wind streams. This is 40,000 feet up in the air. So even though you have this clear kind of wind stream pointing to the northeast, it cannot feel this because it's a weaker storm. And it's basically just a weak storm, meaning it doesn't have a lot of convection with it. So stronger hurricanes are definitely popping out convection much higher in the atmosphere. So it's not even going to tap into this wind current in the upper levels. So it's not even going to feel it. The weaker storm is just going to continue to dwindle and move in the general direction of northwest. And sorry I'm struggling so much. I'm just trying to explain this on the fly. It's a difficult one to figure out. But eventually, it gets into almost an anticyclonic flow here, and the storm does not get affected with shear. And this will if this was to actually happen, this would begin to intensify pretty quickly. But tricky pattern, guys, it really is. But looking at the latest European on that main development region system, we're just going all the way out in time. And first off, you look at this. Look how intense this system gets by the time we're into next Wednesday morning, by the way. We're still talking about Hurricane Danielle. So this will be out here in the North Atlantic for a long time. I would argue the next week or so. But then we watch this piece of energy right here, a low pressure, a potential couple tropical waves. But this one specifically, though, what I mentioned a little bit this morning, has this moving in kind of that direction where it's really low in latitude. We call these low riders, and we always kind of worry and get a little concerned about these, especially if they can make the entire track of the tropical Atlantic and then sneak into areas of the Caribbean. But I can tell you the last few Euros has really weakened this, but there's still a stout signal actually on, let's see if we can get it here. I'm trying to work this on the fly. There is still a stout signal for this on the latest European ensembles. And you can see it here. Pretty strong signal. Now the forward progression of this has definitely it's got mixed signals, but there is a pretty strong signal for this system down here from the European ensembles. It's not a very tight solution, meaning you don't have a lot of L's clustered up. They're kind of everywhere, but there's still a pretty solid signal there. You look at the Euro, and I mean, it wants to strengthen what would be Earl into an all-out major hurricane in the middle of the North Atlantic, and then doesn't bother anybody Kind of gets tangled up a little bit with Danielle, but this would plow it and hit it right into Spain. But you notice the latest GFS, it has that wave down here about 10 days out, but you know, it doesn't really do nothing with it. Interesting little thing that I'm seeing on the latest GFS. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is a convective feedback biased issue with the GFS. Is it pulls a little trough down here and spins up a low pressure and quickly, rapidly intensifies a low pressure into a tropical storm, low-end hurricane, makes landfall in Florida, and then rides up Georgia and the Carolinas. That's an interesting little run from the the GFS for sure. But the GFS is just wild, guys. We know this. But the latest Canadian model likes this little low rider right down here also, and this little piece right here. But check this out. The Canadian likes the idea 10 days out us having an all-out hurricane out here in the Atlantic, and then you're watching this. It looks pretty active out there, guys. It really does. I don't think that the tropics are going to slow down. But do I think we have anything threatening to worry about? Absolutely not. So it's good news. Maybe we'll have a September like last September, which was 2021, where we had a lot of tropical systems, but we didn't have any like major hurricane landfalls. I mean, we had Nicholas, and then we had the system that affected New England. But I mean, that I can't even remember what name that was, but that one actually didn't end up doing a lot. It didn't end up doing as much damage, I think, that we thought it was going to do with that system, from what I heard from New Englanders. That's for sure. But anyways, let me get off here because I'm twisting my words together. I'll have you an update in the morning. I think it'll be an interesting update in the morning if things, they keep showing some crazy model runs with this more Western solution with 91L. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless everybody, and have a blessed evening.